tēnā rawa mai e pā e tō mātai matua nui te rangi i hoiwia. Whakamoe miti rā, ia koe, ka tika, he tika tonu hoki a koe nā kia whakanui, kia whakamoe miti. I ngā mea katoa, whai atu ai e ko koe kia mea tia, me mea tia tonu hia ki roto ki te toi oranga o te tangata. Ngā mea kua me mea tia, ngā mea tonu, me mea tia tonu hia ki tēnei wā, ngā mea tonu, mea ke hara mai, mea ke uu mai, mea ke tau mai. No reira, whakamoe miti, whakanui. Whakawhi rawa, ai tā ye hiuhi. Mene, ka piti hono ka tātai hono, ko rātau rā tērā rātau te mate kia rātau. Ka piti hono ka tātai hono, ko tātau mātonu anō tēnei tātau. Ako te kā nohi ora, kia tātau mā koau. Karahuihui mai anō ai ngā kōrero, a Tahumaakaakanuimatua ki ngā whakataunga kreme, ki ngā taunahanaha Tupuna. O Tahumaakaakanuimatua ki te motu hoi anō, ki roto ki te TeTaiTonga AukatiTai, te he wai a Mauri ora, kua u mai rā i a tātou, ki roto ki tēnā o ngā tai, i nā iana ki tēnei wā tonu nei. Hei aha, hei whakawhanaike mai anō ai i ngā kōrero taunahanaha Tupuna kia tātou mātou kia Tahumaakaakanuimatua ki tēnā ngā AukatiTai, ki te MokiimokiiOuu, tēnā hara mai, nau mai haere, tēnā rā tātou, kai te mihi atu. Mauri ora, kahuri, kia ora mai rā tātou. Yeah, I think just apologies, a couple of apologies first up today. We, as we come into our first time in the SouthernDivide, yeah, first time in the SouthernDivide, finally we get to officially work in the SouthernDivide, even though we've already been working in there. We haven't sort of gone totally public on our work in the SouthernDivide because we had a number of things, just like we did in the north. The Northern Divide, we had a number of things to do there, and I think it took a couple of years, or a year or so, and then we got to officially work our way through things up that way. Well, now we are just beginning to do that in the SouthernDivide. That's from Kaiapoi right along all the way to the west. That includes Motueka, all those areas of the South Island. From the border of the top of the south, the border I think ends around the valleys, Kahurangi National Park included, all those areas that are not within Te Tauihu, that part of the Western Divide, Te Taihawauru AukatiTai, all those parts of the South Island not included. So from on the east coast there, from Kaiapoi down, all the way down to Dunedin, Oamaru, and Southland. And Southland, we have the Stewart Island there as well, Taunai, and there's other areas there too. I just can't think of them at the moment. Right across to Fiordland, Piopiotahi, and Tamatea, all those areas, Milford Sound, Dusky Sound, and all the way up the west coast and back in to join up at Kahurangi National Park and Whanganui Inlet there. where our rights and interests in the country, our native title to the country ceases back at Kahurangi National Park and Whanganui Inlet. And of course from there, that area is joined up with Mohua, which is just around the coast there, around Farewell Spit. And a little bit to the north into Te Tauihu there. Now, I'm just looking for my notes here. I was pretty sure I left them. Oh, here they are. Here they are. Got my notes. Goody. And and so we've just about covered all our national rights and interests, all our Taunaha Tupuna, or our native title rights and interests and claims into the country. So once we start dealing with all of the rights and interests officially and totally publicly on the SouthernDivide, we're then covering our vast interests into the country. Now, we needed to do that work because we needed to see our total extent. Now, we didn't think it would go further than it has. Well, actually, from Tauranga, Punakai ki Tauranga, on the west coast there, we thought that it would cease around about there, but it didn't. It kept going, it kept moving forward. And then when we got back up to the Whanganui Inlet there, Mohua, inclusive into all those rights again and joining up with all those rights again, because we've got a lot more coming from the southwest. See, and that's why we join up around about there now. As we've moved into all those rights and interests, we thought, okay, now maybe we cease there. And in actual fact, it hasn't ceased there. So what we've realized now is, after covering the work that we have covered, is we now have the full extent of our rights and interests. Sorry, I'm a little bit hot and my nose feels a little bit drippy, and because I'm sweating a little bit, so I've turned the heating off, and hopefully it settles down a bit. But so we've got huge rights and interests in the South Island. Probably our North Island interests take up probably only around about a half of our rights and interests in the South. Maybe a wee bit more than that, but so we've got most of our rights and interests in the South. And I'll tell you what, after thinking about it, that doesn't surprise us, because actually that's where we started. We started in the north. We went from the north, we left our uri there and some of our hapu, as you well know, and then we went to the south, and that's actually where we started peopling properly the country. From the south we went into the east, and remember one time I mentioned to you at some point in time we started to join up in the east. Now, but that's a long story. I've just cut it short there by a number of years, probably centuries even. But yes, some apologies there, and for one, the Reo Hapu. I know lots of people have been asking about the Reo Hapu. We'll hold that up at Tatauma, and we're going to hold it up so far, going into the first of our settlements, that's in Wairarapataratua, to the conclusion of that, and also the conclusion of Heretaunga Wairua. Okay, once those two settlements are done, we will review the HapuIwi of Tahumaakaakanuimatua, and we may or may not bring it back around about that time. Now, if Tūhoe Awa don't stop claiming that deal, because that's just ridiculous. I mean, some of the nuances of our Reo Matua and Reo HapuIwi are also in this reo. So our dialectual concepts of our reo, lots of different ones. In fact, probably, and a lot of the Reo Hapu ones, there are specific ones like our senior one in Tutura te Matua, Te Awa. A lot of those forms of moai, a lot of those forms of concepts, like for instance the l sound can come into the reo of Tahumaakaakanuimatua, and other nuances like the one we speak about with te tiriti, te kawanatanga specific, te kawanatanga in a particular capacity, and in terms of capability, in terms of the emphasis on the significance of the word to follow, or the noun to follow, or the adjective to follow the te. If those nuances are a part of our reo HapuIwi, e tatauma is definitely not awa, definitely not tūhoe. Okay, but they're claiming it, they're trying to. This is why, and they would, I mean, because they've lost these. It's one of the things that they've lost. They've lost lots of stuff, lots of central consistency, not in terms of whakapapa and whakapapa kōrero, but in terms of their taonga tuku iho. Yeah, they've lost a lot of that. They've lost a lot of their knowledge on consistencies around tikanga tika me te kawa. Consistencies around, but I don't want to go on about all the things that they've lost. We'll leave those things for now for them, because what we don't want to do is have them claiming more and more of our stuff just because we're seemingly doing a lot better than they are. Hello, next minute we're the target of their claims. So sorry, all those people around the world, there's lots of interest on our reo hapu, and it's such a shame. It's such a shame that we have people vindictive, jealous, spiteful people in the motu, as these people, and the other two groups that are part of all of that, the kahungunu rangitani. I mean, no one would know. But that would be an obvious one, wouldn't it? That would be an obvious one. Who's been causing all the trouble for us over the last 15 years? Kahungunu rangitane. And who else has been doing that? Tūhoe. And who joined them? Awa. So it's obvious, that wasn't such a tough call to make. It wasn't such a... Sorry, I keep bumping stuff over here. It wasn't such a tough call to make on organising around who was causing us all the trouble there. So apologies there, and e tatauma, we have quite an exciting claim going on now in the South Island. And we're not worried about, we've got expected opposition down there. We're not worried about that. And we actually, from what we know, opposition's been there right through. And so we're not worried about that either. The thing about them is that they have to realise is that they're all teina. That's the first thing. Second thing is that none of them are original to the South Island. We are. Third thing is that none of them are the most expansive into the South Island. We are. Okay, so over the centuries, we've done some hard work there. We've done a lot of strategic intermarriage. We've done a lot of peopling across the Moteo, especially in the South Island, and then up into the north, settling our senior ships into the west. Okay, but hopefully these groups settle down, because we'd love to just get on with it and do our work, use our reo hapu. Some of our people in Australia as well, a little upset because we tried to use our reo hapu for some of our posts over there, and some of them really liked it, and then we rubbed it out because we had to. Look, sometimes we get that, and we understand that. We understand the jealousies, but what's the use of jealousies? I mean, yeah. As a Christian, I mean, jealousy, I mean, that's just a sinful thing, such a sinful thing. You've got to learn, like everything else sinful, you've got to learn to throw that. And then pretty much things will come right for you. And that's all the advice that I have for the tūhoe awa kahunurangitane. I mean, there's such junior groups, these groups that, you know, it would be ideal for them to just give up all this charade, because it's not working on anybody. No one is listening to the tūhoe and awa anymore. No one is really getting carried away with their claims in the motu to be supremacy, to be senior. I mean, they're not. There's five HapuIwi above them, and most senior, and all of the whakapapa kōrero in the country tells us so. So we can't go wrong there. So yeah, there's so much against them. And whilst they're claiming the reo HapuIwi of Tahumaakaakanuimatua, they should make sure that the consistencies and the concepts utilised within that reo are all the same as what they would use within their own reo. Okay? And they're not. Quite clearly they're not. And I mean, we don't have anything dialectual that is even similar to the tūhoe, okay, or the awa. So, and as for kahunurangitane, well, yeah, perhaps they're still, deep down, they're still lost sheep, you know. They really don't know what it is they're doing, what it is they're trying to achieve. We're pretty settled on the fact that settlement in Uretaarewa-Hapu is all there and ready to go, and that's because they can't claim our leadership. They can't claim to be iwi anymore. We laughed at their story in the paper because they had them down as iwi again. No doubt if we asked why they did that, they possibly did that by mistake, or, you know, things like that. They're not iwi. They never could be. They're not strong enough, and the people that run their show are not strong enough either. Yeah, we're pretty keen to get on with it in Heretaunga Wairua and Wairarapa before we review how far we're going to go. We keep, every time something happens, like last week, the other apology that I have is on the disappearance of the volume last week. I think that was cyber criminals, and that they managed to get in there, and yeah, they got rid of our sound there for a while, and took up about almost 7 minutes of the ending of our kōrero from last week for Te Taira Whitia AukatiTai. And that was a shame, because it was such a good kōrero, and it put all of the East, and we need that. We need the East put into perspective. We need them put into the correct perspective. And we need the full and accurate heritage of our Eastern divide super tribal entities, from Uri, whanau-uri to Hapu, Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri, stage 1, 2, 3 to 5, And we also need, the full and accurate heritage of our HapuIwi in the Eastern Divide, and we're one of those. We're the most senior one there. As far as we know, Moai's on the East Cape, they're the most senior there, Moai HapuIwi, and so we've got the whole scene set. Okay, the whole scene is set. So sorry about all of that, but just letting you know what's happening there with the Reo HapuIwi, and exactly what happened last week when the sound went off. That wasn't me trying to block you from the rest of the kōrero. That was actually some cyber criminals. So hopefully we've worked at that enough. We've got that blocked and better operating and organised for this week. And you get to hear all of this kōrero for this week, because it's really important, this particular kōrero. And it's really important, e tata mā, because this is our first one, and secondly, because we've never heard the vastness, the extent of the claims of Tahumaakaakanuimatua in the South Island. So here we go. Let's get into it. I'll just recap on the Waitaha Ariki in the South Island, the kōrero that I brought forward to you from the East. Now, the point is, in getting the Eastern perspective right, then we're all set to, the scene is set for the South. 1350 or thereabouts, AD, circa 1350 AD or thereabouts. We had Takitimu waka come into the country. They go to the north, brought here by Tamatea Riki Nui of Tahumaakaakanuimatua, Waitaha Arangi. Okay? Comes into the country, brings the waka. They leave the north, they leave some uri in the north, and they go to Tauranga. They dock there. They go to the east, to Turanganui-a-Kiwa next, from there. And it's from there that we get a very interesting perspective on things, because from there, Tahupōtiki and the Horota waka, because they're so close. One is the most teina line of Whiro te Tupua o Manatū, and one is the most senior line of Whiro te Tupua o Manatū. Yet the teina line that I just spoke about, the Pōtiki line of Whiro te Tupua o Manatū from Hirawe, actually marries into the senior line of that top line. So it causes a tūākana teina interchangeability, within tikanga me te kawa between the two tribes. Okay, so Poraurangi, and that makes for interesting learning and knowledge and information for us to understand the accurate status of existence of Tahupōtiki. See, because he's the youngest. Okay, so he's the youngest brother of Poraurangi of the top line. Okay, so same thing there. Interchangeability. Tahupōtiki is always Te Tahumaakaakanuimatua, Tahupōtiki is always teina. To Waitaha rangi kahungunu te mea, there's interchangeability. Okay, do you understand that? So what I'm saying in the interchangeability of things is that in terms of being tūākana teina, even though they come from a line where Tahupōtiki would usually be tūākana, what happens is that, and that's particularly important for understanding our vast rights in the South Island, okay? Because most of the other rights and interests are total. They're overwhelmingly Tahumaakaakanuimatua. But that one's interesting in terms that is the same line that Tahupōtiki comes from, And according to some sources, the same waka. They say that Horota and Takitimu are one and the same waka in some cases. Now, that's how closely related they are and associated they are through those era in time. Aroha mai e tatauma. I'm just going to get a wee bit more comfortable here. Now, so e tatauma. From there we get the waka takitimu leaving, and as they say, horota, or just the takitimu, and they called it horota over that time, calling into and docking from there into the Hawke's Bay. Okay, some more get off there. They go into, after that, Wairarapa Tararua, some more get off there. Waitaha, Rangi, Tahumaakaakanuimatua. And then the Tahupōtiki take the waka to the south. Okay, after that, Tamateo Riki Nui continues around. They dock at Otago, they dock at Dunedin, they dock in Southland, they dock at Fiordland, they go up the coast, lots of different areas up the west coast as well. And actually they did that around about 3 times. This is around about circa 1350. So we learn a fair bit about the Tahupōtiki, okay, through that. Why? Because they were with the Takitimu, or they were with the Horota, and they made the same journey, see? Except Takitimu went around 3 times. Okay, my understanding is that Horota only went once. Okay, so Tahupōtiki, we learn from there the coming of the Tahupōtiki to the South Island, around about 1350 or thereabouts. Okay? The interchangeability there between Waitaha Rangi, whose waka that was, Takitimu, who was headed by a Tahumaakaakanuimatua, who was the most senior line of intermarriage into the descendants of that waka. And in fact, who had overlaid that whole ancestry over 3 generations. So it was basically a Tahumaakaakanuimatua migration. Okay, of the most junior proportions. And there you go. Yeah, there you go. The only other one of the most junior proportions of Tahumaakaakanuimatua was Kurahaupo. Coming from Rarotonga, that's where the Rangitane Nui Rangi come from. Again, massive interrelations there. Okay? And so we get the Tahupōtiki. But let's not forget, Tahumaakaakanuimatua are already there. And this is why a lot of those connections into Tahumaakaakanuimatua through Waitaha Rangi, through Tahumaakaakanuimatua te Tamarua, Tahumaakaakanuimatua te Tama, and Tahumaakaakanuimatua all get off at those different stop-off points. Okay, starting from the north. And in fact, those tribes peopled in the north in particular firstly. Okay, so very interesting corridor, but let's focus on the south, because it's in the south that we want to understand why our claim is as such within the south. You need to understand that clearly before you can really have an opinion for or against. See? And because we're one of the first, we have a 2,000 to 3,000 year claim on the South Island, same as we have in the north. That's where native title derives. That's where your Taunaha Tupuna of Tahumaakaakanuimatua derives. Okay? But we're talking about 1350 because that was when the Takitimu came here. That was when Horota came here, and that's when the Tahupōtiki got to the South Island. So they were far from the first. Very expansive, obviously, but we think the expansion of Tahupōtiki was largely through Tahumaakaakanuimatua, not via their own ancestries at all. but via vast intermarriage with Tahumaakaakanuimatua, through Tuahuriri, through Huirapa, the two most senior lines of Tahu Pōtiki. And let's not forget, Tahu Pōtiki are only uri whanau-uri. Okay? Why? Because they're the most junior of that line. Remember that line I spoke about before? The most senior line of Whiro te Tupua o Manatū of Ngārauru, who married into Rarotonga, is Poraurangi. Okay? Poraurangi had an older sister, Ira Manawa Piko. Our Tupuna, out of Waitaha Rangi, who was one of the through one of the Tahumaakaakanuimatua Ariki lines, who married into Waitaha Rangi, married Ira Manawa Piko, and that was Korotai Matua. Okay, so interesting, eh? It's all a very interesting kōrero, but we must learn the primary details that we do not know in order to make the calls that we do. The only reason Tahu Pōtiki in the south makes the calls that they do is because they don't know this sort of kōrero. They don't know this sort of detail. Okay? Once they learn this sort of detail, maybe, just maybe, they'll start to question their stance on the Tahu Pōtiki of the South Island. Because actually, the huge majority of Tahu Pōtiki in the South Island are Tahumaakaakanuimatua. And they need to understand that, and they need to understand why. Okay? And Ngārauru are so junior to us anyway. Ngārauru are from the most junior HapuIwi line in the country. So there are hundreds of thousands of lines of ancestry junior. You know, they via Tahu Pōtiki, aroha mai. Via Tahu Pōtiki, they come into the South Island and start to expand and people through the South Island as well. After the third of the migrations, 3 major migrations took place over. I remember me talking about that a number of months ago. Over the last over 1,000 years. The first one took place over 1,000 years ago. The second took place around about the 1200s, circa 1200s AD, and this is the third one where Takitimu came across. Now, understand the claim of the Tahu Pōtiki. See, it only goes back to around about 1350. Comes from the most junior line in the top line from Whiro te Tupua o Manatū, from Ngārauru, who married into Rarotonga, and intermarriage into the last line of that same line, from Hirawe down to Taiohua. And then you get all these Ariki intermarriages right into that line, which is the Ariki line, right through. And over and over and over and over and over. Now they're, I wouldn't mind betting, we haven't bothered to check, we wouldn't mind betting it's totally Tahumaakaakanuimatua now. But we still acknowledge the last 6 lines, which from Taiohua back to us at the moment are still Rarotonga, but we could be wrong about that. Okay, but it doesn't matter anyway, because the huge, obviously, the overwhelming majority of the Hapu Uretaarewa-Hapu of Waitaha Arangi is actually Tahumaakaakanuimatua. So that gives us a good starting point. Okay, we understand, because through all of that kōrero we get the status of Tahu Pōtiki. We get the traditional status of existence of Tahu Pōtiki in the of Tahu Pōtiki in the South Island. Okay, and this is via circa 1350 AD or thereabouts. Okay? And that's around about where we need to begin e tātou mā our kōrero for today, because we get to understanding from there e tātou mā that we have very little doubt about, you know, where the other lines stand as well. I remember all of that kōrero from Te Taira Whiti AukatiTai. Remember all of that kōrero? Now, aroha mai. Now, that's talking about their awa connections, their irakai pūtahi connections. Irakai pūtahi as well has come into some of the kōrero in Wairarapa as well, and it's just ridiculous, yeah. Irakai pūtahi got trounced everywhere. Okay, it's not worth Tahu Pōtiki claiming that line. Paikea and his line, his most senior line, got trounced on a journey back into Rarotonga. That's the Battle of Uretaarewa-Hapu. Anyone who knows that story on the battle there. During the Uretaarewa-Hapu, Paikea lost all of his top line. The whole line got taken. And so Paikea wasn't so great outside of Porourangi. So he didn't do so great, and Irakai Pūtahi comes out of there, they're part Awa. The Awa line, even Awa, have not done so greatly all the way down the coast there, from in the Bay of Plenty into the east, starting from Turanganui, Akiwa or Gisborne, down through Hawke's Bay. You know, they've just been trounced everywhere. Okay, so not a great claim for the Tahu Pōtiki, because even in the south they're in the same predicament. Okay, so we have so much proof of that in the AJHRs and masses and masses of the tribunal, Waitangi tribunal reports, you know, Irakai Pūtahi and Awa. Yeah, I mean, because they come from Awa. So we know their deal. You look for traces of their deal in the south, and there's very little. Most of the deal in the south actually is Tahumaakaakanuimatua, and this is what the Tūhoe are not recognising down there. So hopefully they back their conclusions up down there, the Tūhoe, and they start to look at things a little bit differently after we show them all the concepts that they're working with and where they actually come from. Okay, and so not a good claim. Awa, Irakai Pūtahi, waste of time. Waste of time. The line of preeminence in the south, the long time heritage, 2,000 to 3,000 years, right across the country with Moai HapuIwi, Te awa HapuIwi, Tahumaakaakanuimatua HapuIwi, Māmoe HapuIwi whanau-uri, Moriori HapuIwi, and then from the 1200s into 1200s we get Te Tini o Toi. Because most of the Awa and Tūhoe actually didn't come in until the third migration over that more than 1,000 years. Okay, so that third migration around circa 1350 or thereabouts. Even in the north we get ngā toki mata whaorua, kupes waka, around about that same time, 1200, sorry, not 1200, 1300, 1350 or thereabouts, he gets to the north. That's Māmoe's waka, that's Kupe's waka, because Kupe comes from Māmoe, and therefore that waka is one of the waka of Tahumaakaakanuimatua, not Ngā Puhi. But the Ngāpuhi do come from there. Why? They're strongly intermarried into there, and also a lot of their descendants come from there. But this is a lot of the problem. We've got a funny feeling it's the same problem down the south there. A lot of the problem in the north is that they are unable to interpret their descent lines. Where they originate from, where they start originally, and where they end up, and how you interpret each turn that the lines come to you. We've already looked at a lot of their findings and conclusions, and we find that same trouble in the south, where a lot of their conclusions, they've made them out of ignorance of how to interpret those traditional whakapapa and whakapapa little lines. So the lines of ancestry have been largely interpreted wrongly. Secondly, they've been, because they haven't understood them properly, they've been largely following for years, following the Crown's notion, or the Crown notions, views, or misunderstandings of all these lines. And this is the big problem we have with the whole of the claims process with the Crown, is that the Crown was far too hasty to bring this process in. The Crown was far too hasty to call all their LNGs, Tahumaakaakanuimatua also being one. Because, yeah, those tribes are far from those sorts of tribes that should have had LNG status anywhere. Just like Kahunu, just like Rangitane. I mean, look at Tahumaakaakanuimatua there, uri whanau-uri. So let's get the story straight. E tatauma. Sorry, I'm still bumping into stuff here. Every time I move about, I bump into stuff. Yeah, let's get the story straight. Okay, so that's the scene. Totally set now. It's totally set now. You cannot doubt us from there, because the amount of evidence is insurmountable. Okay, it's copious. It's mind-blowing, some of the evidence for the South. Okay, and so we need to look at Whanau-uri, who is also the name for Canterbury. If we look at the full name, instead of just Waitaha, it's Whanau-uri, or just Whanau-uri. That's the proper name. And also the name of the Hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau of Whanau-uri, a part of Tahumaakaakanuimatua. That's who's now Tahumaakanuimatua have been utilising all these years. Okay? Tahumaakanuimatua are strongly intermarried through our most junior lines of Ngā Kainui. Let's set the scene properly here. So, whenever Takitimu docked at those certain areas, Wairarapa Hawke's Bay, after docking at Turanganui a Kiwa o Gisborne in circa 1350 or thereabouts AD, they docked in, and more intermarriages were made with the Ngā Kainui there, the most junior, and then more of those lines taken into the south. Okay, and the thing about a number of these uri, I think we used to have 9 in the south. We now have 10 because of Whanau-uri. Okay, and the thing about these lines of uri whanau-uri and Hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau is that they were left in those different areas of the country to people those areas, and also hold on to them for all of the senior lineages of Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Okay, they would eventually come back to them, organise them around the senior ships. Once the senior ships and the top Taiopuru Ariki Mataura had settled and felt good about their settlement into the country, everyone else would get organised around that. Okay, and actually our first place of settlement was Kaikoura. Okay, and they were closely related to Wairarapa-Tararua. Okay, and that's how we ended up on Wairarapa-Tararua, because we shifted it to Wairarapa-Tararua, which became the strongest point for us to operate from. We moved from Wellington to Wairarapa, Wellington to Wairarapa. We kept doing that until we found the strongest point in the country of our ancestors, of our most senior, from which to work from. And we found that Kaikoura was no longer there. Okay? And so we moved everything to Wairarapa-Tararua, our strongest point, and started to build out from there. And still in the Western Divide, the most senior and the the most senior and the Taiopuru Ariki Mataura, but in the North Island, now in Te Tiri o Te Moana Hawaii ki Tau, within Wairarapa-Tararua, and it's been there since. When did we finalise being there? Wairarapa-Tararua, probably around about 2001? Yeah. 2000 maybe? Oh, between 2000 and 2002, somewhere around there. Probably 2001. We solidified staying there. For a wee while, it moved back into the Wellington area. But yeah, the whole of our organisation moved back again. So that was probably about 2007, might have been earlier, 2006, 2007. And so we've built a very solid, very powerful foundation on top of the punctuated, very solid and very powerful foundations of our HapuIwi and of the Taiopuru Ariki Mataura of Tahumaakaakanuimatua from the west, but into the whole of our vast rights and interests into the country. Okay, so now for the South Island. Doesn't that set the scene? Doesn't that make it interesting compared to what they're saying down there? Hey, it does, eh? What they're saying down there, that it's all tahu pōtiki, I can't see it. I can't see that being the case. Okay? A whole lot of misinterpretation going on in there. A whole lot of lack of knowledge of the true perspective and status of existence of tahu pōtiki. A whole lot of lack of consideration that there are far more preeminent, far more prominent lines of ancestry right through there than tahu pōtiki. Okay, do you understand where we're at now? Okay, and so Waitaha Ariki, a part of Tahumaakaakanuimatua, begins to, they began a lot sooner than tahu pōtiki. Solidifying their rights and interests there in the South Island, and probably will before. Oh, sorry, hang on. No, they wouldn't have been well before. There would have been some time after the Tahumaakaakanuimatua senior majority had done so. Okay, because then not long after that, most of them moved into the Western Divide, up into Wairarapa-Tararua. And of course Waimari no the west there, Wellington, blah 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 blah. Okay, so a little bit of a different kōrero going on there, eh? When we think about the full and accurate heritage, they might want to think about down the south there, that what they're holding on to at the moment is actually quite off the accuracy needed in order to gauge rightly and rightfully exactly what the kōrero is going on down there. Okay, what exactly is the right kōrero and the accurate kōrero for our people down there? The most senior and the most prominent of the preeminent super tribes of the South Island has always been Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Moai still has lands there in the Dunedin area, but they're the only areas of Dunedin there that we know that they still hold lands. We don't know that they hold lands in any other area in the South Island. Same for Moriori. A lot of people claim that Moriori has lands around there. Perhaps they do within Waikato, because Waikato has some lands down there. But their lands are very, their claims, Waikato, Toa Rangatira and all those claims, are all very minute compared to our claims down there. Okay? Doesn't that make for interesting, considerations? Considering that what we've got down there is a total tahupōtiki claim. How ridiculous. How ridiculous that would be looking now that we know exactly what's happened through the years since circa 1350, since tahupōtiki got into the country. I mean, how can that be? How can it be so in the South Island when all the originals were already there when they got there? Waitaha Ariki was already established in Canterbury. Okay? So let's not get the idea that tahupōtiki built anything there. They did not build the empire that held the South Island over all these years. The empire was already built and continuing to build. Okay? It was an empire of super tribes already there. Okay, so tahupōtiki, being the uri whanau-uri and being the very junior one, and also through all the intermarriage as well, and overlay as well, by three mainly of our hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri, including HapuIwi whanau-uri. That's the Māmoe. Just the Māmoe. The Māmoe HapuIwi. The Waitaha Ariki Hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri, and the Waitaha Nui Hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. Okay, you also obviously you have intermarriage through Waitaha Rangi. Now we know who they are. They're the people of Takitimu Waka, people of Tamatea Ariki Nui, who was Ariki Taiōpuru of Waitaha Rangi. Taiōpuru because Takitimu was his waka. Okay, so we understand that kōrero to get the story straight down there, and just to prove that we're not just telling stories here, and we're not. We're here to hopefully help those that are already in the South, trying to prove that the status of tahupōtiki in the South is total over the South Island. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. And that couldn't be true. Okay? And then the most expensive, in fact, the most expensive left in the country is Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Whereas in fact it would have been Te Awa and Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Possibly, that's what we can see. But even Te Awa lost a lot of their lands. Okay? Te Awa lost a lot of their lands. We can see that too. Okay, and that's mainly through that Musket War period. Moai seems to have lost a lot of their lands as well. Moriori as well, but then Moriori had a number of other battles that they lost. Okay, so that explains mostly why their claims, their Taunaha Tupuna into the country are so much less than ours, than Tahumaakaakanuimatua, who remained consistently one of the most expensive in the country over centuries. Okay? Okay? So, in understanding that, I mean, you understand what I'm telling you. The overlays over tahu pōtiki, uri whanau-uri, so easy to see there. That the descendants, every descendant, let me explain those lines and how we should interpret those. If we're not interpreting them right, then we need to understand why we interpret them in favour overwhelmingly of Tahumaakaakanuimatua. The status of the line. Tahu pōtiki is nowhere near Tahumaakaakanuimatua. I mean, every one of those lines, right down to Waitaha Ariki, right down to Māmoe, HapuIwi. The status of existence of those lines is just overwhelming. And hundreds of thousands of lines of ancestry and seniority to Tahu pōtiki. Okay? Understand those things. Once you understand those details, once you understand those areas of the question, those things we need to, those details we need to understand in order to be instrumental in interpreting those lines, then we begin to understand why. So overwhelmingly, not totally, but overwhelmingly, let's say between 70% and 90%. Because of the status of tahu pōtiki uri whanau-uri, I would say between 70% and 90% of the intermarriages and overlays over tahu pōtiki are highly due to the simple fact of the status of Tahumaakaakanuimatua, the prominence of Tahumaakaakanuimatua in the country, and the simple fact that once top lines started to intermarry into areas, all of the junior ones of Tahumaakaakanuimatua started to intermarry across them as well. Okay? The Irakai Pūtahi line's not going to matter. The Awa line's not going to matter either. Okay? They're, around about circa 1350 as well. What sort of status have they got right across the country? Not too much. The Awa do have lots of status within the Uretaarewa. We understand that. But outside of there, if you have a good look at Awa, if you have a good look at Irakai Pūtahi in particular, you'll see how weak their claim is and why. So let's understand that these are the same or similar reasons that they have such a weak claim in the south as well. And you need to understand that Tahumaakaakanuimatua were already there. Now, this is where I'm coming to the next part of this, to give us a bit of a heads up on the status of existence of Tahumaakaakanuimatua in the south. Very, very similar to circa 1350 when the tahu pōtiki came into the country. Okay? And that should give us some of the particulars on the update for TeTaiTonga AukatiTai. So I'm just about to start into that. Sorry, just get a little bit more comfortable here on the seat here. And that's the thing with me, I get so passionate about my cord and I start to move about a fair bit. And so, look, understand one thing. We would never claim this if we didn't know that it was accurate enough to claim. It's a pity that the Crown, or the New Zealand Crown Corporation, didn't have the luxury of taonga tukuiho that we have, to be able to interpret, to be able to conclude, to be able to consider details around the full and accurate heritage on some of these tribes. Okay? They didn't have that. They didn't have that, and they hastily brought in their claims process. This is why we've got such a big mess right across the country. We had a big mess, and heaps of people, you know, they just went straight for settlement because they thought that that was what they had to do. And little did they know what they should have done was held up. If I was one of those early tribes that claimed, I would have held up right through. By rights, probably about 70% of the settlements that have been done in this country should not have been done. They should have been held up. Because I think what a lot of them would find if they were to look over their claims and what they ended up with, the whole reason that they ended up with what they ended up with were mainly because primarily a lot of the detail in their claims were incorrect, and a lot of the full and accurate heritage isn't on most of the tribes that they've dealt with. Wrongful interpretation of whakapapa and whakapapa kōrero, lines of ancestry, and you know, chronicalization of kōrero is inaccurate, not very precise at all. Okay, and so we have that in the South. So when we're interpreting those lines, those statuses come into question straight away. It was so easy for us to intermarry lines of tahu pōtiki and overlay them straight away. Okay, all the generations started to get taken over. And so when you do that, the descendants that come from those lines, each of those lines, are actually Tahumaakaakanuimatua, overwhelmingly. There would very rarely be a case where the actual junior line in an intermarriage with tahu pōtiki, the junior line would actually be traditionally acquiring that line of descent. But there are some, but very, very rarely. As you can see, between 70 and 90, so it's between 10 and 30% only of the lines of descent. So very rarely did descendants come from any of those lines that were intermarried that actually could be said to be tahu pōtiki. Do you understand that? Okay? And if you do, then you understand that in the line of those intermarriages, the main reo that became among the tahu pōtiki, the main reo, and I hear down there they're refusing rā kainui, well, they best are not to, because most of those intermarriages came through the most junior of the rā kainui. Okay? So you can't really argue with that. Their reo has to be rā kainui. Okay? There are a lot more of Tahumaakaakanuimatua te tama and Tahumaakaakanuimatua te tamarua. Also, the reo of Tahumaakaakanuimatua, right through those lines. And then, see, that's 1, 2, 3, and then we get the 3 other lines that I'm talking about. That's 6, 7. 7 lines altogether that overlay tahu pōtiki right across the Southern Divide. Okay, and that is from the mana whenua perspective. I mean, I want you to think hard about that, because that's why I'm about to cover the status of existence of Tahumaakaakanuimatua in the South Island circa 1350 AD or thereabouts. And this is the same status of existence today. Okay. A lot of the lands down there, because of that 10 to 30%, there's tahu pōtiki within that 10 to 30%. That's fine. That's fine. But you'll find the great majority of the South Island is an actual fact. Apart from those who made inroads, those tribes that made inroads like Waikato, Tuarangatira, Te Atiawa Nui no Runga Te Rangi, HapuIwi. Those tribes, those super tribes, they made inroads into the south over the Muscat War period. Kaitipai rā ira. We've had a good look at all their claims. Aye. tino pai. They haven't got Taunaha Tupuna down there, but they definitely do have rights and interests of claim, and can claim title via raupatu, via tiarapa, via raupati whenua. Okay? Via tikanga they can also claim, and tika, and kawa as well. They can also claim, but not taunahanaha whenua, taunahanaha tūpuna, no. Because they came in through the 1820s to the 1840s. Okay? So at Tatauma, can we have a look? Yeah, I'm still, this is quite a huge update, so I'm still on the update at Tatauma. And we have a little bit of a difficulty here trying to look at where. So mainly we will be stuck in update today. Okay, so it's a big kōrero today's kōrero, and this is why we're not able to go on to anything else. We've got to talk Southern Divide. Because there's so much kōrero to go on down through there, right through the Southern Divide. Yeah, right down to the bottom of the south, from we're talking about from the most southern border of Te Taiwihu, or the top of the south, all the way down, covering all the lands, all the way down to the most southern border, or the coastlands of Southland, and including Stewart Island. That's what we're covering. That's what we're talking about, that whole land area. And we're going to run through that in the update, so that you understand that in circa 1350 AD or thereabouts, the same status can be accorded Tahumaakaakanuimatua in the South Island. Okay, I'm not joking to you. I'm not joking to you. We're not here to mince any words. We've been trying since 2010. Remember me telling you in Te AukatiTai? Trying since 2010 to get more kōrero, more consultations and more hui with the tahu pōtiki, and they continually refused. You know what? They're in real trouble now, because they didn't want to deal with the situation. They thought they had it all in the bag. And I think it's only been over probably the last 3 to 5 years or thereabouts that they've started to realise, whoops, we're in some trouble here. Probably around about that, last 3 to 5 years. We're in some trouble here. And then they started to take notice. They've still got groups there refusing us. They've still got groups there opposing us, and that's fine. We've got no worries with that. But we need the consultation in order to sort these stuff out. And now we're ready to do that. So we're going to consult with them some more, get these stuff ironed out, and make sure that the tahu pōtiki understand that we're not going to stop till we get every blade of grass, every inch of that land back under Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Okay? And so that's what we're about to talk in a moment. I just wanted to mention, I just noticed in my notes here, e Tatauma, to mention next week's kōrero. Next week's kōrero would usually go straight to Wairarapa ki Tararua o te Moteo a Māui. Now, Wairarapa Tararua is going to have its kōrero, and the kōrero will be on Te Tiriti. However, the kōrero after that won't go straight to the Mākei. What we're going to do is go straight back to Te AukatiTai. Because what we're going to start to do, because the way our kōrero are organised, because we've now got all our 4 divides in our kōrero, the way our kōrero are organised has only been largely because of how our kōrero has come to be. and how it's been organised over the time, and how our research and conclusions have been able to evolve. And so we've ended up doing our kōrero in the order that we've been doing them. TeTaiTonga AukatiTai, or the Southern Divide, being the MokiimokiiOuu, or Ouu, we know e tatauma that e tatauma we have it would be at our best interests to reorder our kōrero. So that's what we're going to do from next week. Next week we go into Wairarapa, we do Te Tiriti, but we're going to go straight back to Te Taira Whiti AukatiTai after that. Then go to the Mākei where we talk more Te Tiriti. We don't know when we can use the time in Te Taira Whiti AukatiTai to further concentrate on Te Tiriti. When that happens, it happens. Okay? We don't think it'll happen in TeTaiTonga AukatiTai, so the Southern Divide is going to be largely taken up by SouthernDivide. Okay? And that's going to happen for quite some time. Okay? I wish I could move some of this stuff, but I can't. I've got I've got desk loads of all this intricate stuff right next to me where I'm situated. And I keep bumping it, and some of it's already fallen down, but look, e tatauma, so we're going to reorder that. Why? Because we want to do the kōrero from Tuakana of Tahumaakaakanuimatua into Teina of Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Okay, so we will need to go from Wairarapa to Te Taira Whiti AukatiTai, so hauauru AukatiTai, to Te Taira Whiti AukatiTai, into Te TeTaiTonga AukatiTai. Sorry, sometimes when you don't use words for a long time, you tend to forget them on the spot. And from Te TeTaiTonga AukatiTai, we'll come back down to Te TeTaiTonga AukatiTai. Okay, do you understand that? So we want to run our kōrero from senior to junior of Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Okay, even though all our research has fallen in this sort of order, no. We want to go back to traditional order and work in that way. Okay, e tatauma. So next week, Wairarapa, Te Tiriti. The following week, Te Taira Whiti AukatiTai. The following week, Mākei or Te TeTaiTonga AukatiTai, Te Tiriti, and then back to Te TeTaiTonga AukatiTai and all its kōrero, all its tātaitai kawa of the kōrero. That's what all of this is, and the primary detail that you need to know. That's what we're discussing today. And now we're going to go run through as an update for you today, and the completion of the update is huge. We're almost going to take up all the time today on update alone. Because our South Island rights and interests are so huge. Okay, so in kaya poi there, let's make a start at tatauma. And kaya poi there where the rākainui hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri is. Te Hapuiwi hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. Māmoe HapuIwi whanau-uri. The Waitaha Ariki hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. The Waitaha Nui hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. And then Tahupōtiki uri whanau-uri. And then Waitaha Rangi hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. And also the and that's us there, I think. Yeah. Whanau-uri a Tahumaakaakanuimatua HapuIwi kia kaya poi. kia kaiapoi. Okay? And so that's how we looked in circa 1350 AD, and that's very similar to how we looked there in Kaiapoi. They were all our tribes. The whole 10 of those into the Kaiapoi area. Okay? Remember, everywhere that Waitaha Nui Hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri is, that's where we are. Sorry, that's where Waitaha Ariki Hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri also is. Okay? Apart from them, there's also Rākai Nui Hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri that I talked about, but apart from them, there's also the Uri Whanau-uri of Tahumaakaakanuimatua Te Tama, and the Uri Whanau-uri of Tahumaakaakanuimatua Te Tamarua. They're also there in the South Island. So you see the situation we have there. Now, if we discounted Tahu Pōtiki and waited till circa 1350 for them to get in there, and in that order, then that's the situation for Tahu Pōtiki. Okay? They're far from the most senior there. They're far from the most prominent tribes in there. They're far from the preeminent. But they are, in fact, Tahumaakaakanuimatua because of how largely they've been overlaid. Right across the country, in fact. Right across the country. Okay? So I just thought I'd mention those two Uri Whanau-uri from within Tahumaakaakanuimatua and add them in there, just so you know the full extent. And then if we look from Kaiapoi and look to all the lands to the westward, into the Alps, when you get to the Alps, and including the Alps. Okay? Our claims are also to the whole of the Southern Alps. Okay, e tatauma? Apart from those lands where tribes had inroads, blah, blah, blah. You know, te mea. So, most of the lands to the westward, to the Alps, and including the Southern Alps, is all Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Okay? Understand that. That is the update. That is where we are at right now. This may have been the same case in circa 1350 before Tahu Pōtiki got there, but it's also the same case today. Okay, all those tribes of Tahumaakaakanuimatua still have those taunahanaha tupuna into those lands. Kaiapoi to the west, including all the lands except for those from those who made inroads from within the within the Muscat War period between 2019-2020 into 1839-40, 41-42. E tatauma. That's pretty much the status of existence and the claims. The status of the claims of Tahumaakaakanuimatua and those lands. Let's go into Uretaarewa, where we have Rākai Nui Hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. We have Tahumaakaakanuimatua Hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. I'm going to finish this kōrero where we finished this kōrero today, okay? Because I'm trying to remember when I started. It had to be about quarter or 10 to 12, something like that. It's now almost 1 o'clock, so we've got about 20 minutes or so, maybe a half an hour left. But I've got a feeling this quarter is going to take a little bit longer than that. But let's keep moving forward with it. And let's also understand the claims of the Te Arawa into the south. They haven't understood properly yet the status of Waitaha Nui. They haven't understood properly yet their major connections into Waitaha Nui, which we think is Waitaha-Tūrāuta, and that their Waitaha is Waitaha-Tūrāuta and Waitaha-Ahi. That's who we think their Waitaha is, because we have the major claims over Waitaha Nui. And that's why they are Tahumaakaakanuimatua, because the major intermarriages of those lines. See, if the Arawa married in afterwards, of which a lot of the time they did, most of those lines would not have been Te Arawa. See? That is how you interpret lines like that from a junior intermarriage. I mean, those lines weren't originally, those lands where they intermarried were not originally Te Arawa either. And neither is Waitaha Nui. They're not originally Te Arawa either. As you can see, they came from Waitaha Ariki. Okay? And obviously, the most senior line of descent of Waitaha Ariki is through Tahumaakaakanuimatua in the first place. When you intermarry over those lines, that makes it even more solidly Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Especially once you've overlaid them. Okay? So in all tautahi, we've got Ākainui, Hapu Uretaarewa-Hapu, we've got Tahumaakaakanuimatua, Hapu Uretaarewa-Hapu. We've got Mamwe, HapuIwi, whanau-uri, and we've got Waitaha Ariki, Hapu Uretaarewa-Hapu, and we've also got Waitaha Nui, Hapu Uretaarewa-Hapu. We've also got Tahupōtiki Uri whanau-uri, and then we've also got Waitaha Rangi, Hapu Uretaarewa-Hapu. I've got a funny feeling, because I haven't got those particular notes here, I've got a funny feeling we've got some Rangitaone Nui Rangi in there somewhere. We might not, I could be wrong, because I'm pretty sure they cease in Te Tauihu, but I've sort of got them on my mind at the moment. I don't think so. I don't think that they're in there. But remember, in every area that we go into, the uri whanau-uri of Tahumaakaakanuimatua te tama, and uri whanau-uri of Tahumaakaakanuimatua te tamarua are also in those lands. Okay, they're part of who intermarried over the Tahupōtiki. So you've got overlays right through 7 lines, and that's, if you're going to interpret every one of those lines as Tahupōtiki, you're being ridiculous, outright ridiculous. Okay, that's 7 lines of, thousands of ancestries senior to you. Look, forget it. Forget it claiming all those lands into Tahupōtiki anymore, all those ancestries. Okay, so we see the reo clearly coming through Tahupōtiki, the reo of Rākainui, and the reo of Tahumaakaakanuimatua te tama and Tahumaakaakanuimatua te tamarua are the 3 reo of Tahumaakaakanuimatua. And of course, I told you that we've cited evidence of our reo amongst the Tahupōtiki sources. All of the main Tahupōtiki sources and all of the main archival Tahupōtiki sources we can add to that, e tātou mā, and including land court records, all of them. The reo of Tahumaakaakanuimatua is in those reo. Why? Because they're rākai nui. The reo matua of Tahumaakaakanuimatua, the reo HapuIwi of Tahumaakaakanuimatua, and also the reo HapuIwi of Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Those are their reo. Those are their main reo. But beginning with rākai nui, that's their main one. Okay, tatama. So you're beginning to understand, and then from Tautahi or Christchurch, we go to the westward again, till we reach the Alps and include the Alps. That's the extent of the claim of Tahumaakaakanuimatua in that land. That's how it was in circa 1350 AD or roundabouts when Tahupōtiki got there. But Tahupōtiki still managed to get in there. Why? Because we intermarried them severely from their most senior line all the way down. Okay? That's through Tuahuriri and Huirapa. That's their most senior lines. Okay? Now, that's from 7, major status tribes. And from the most status tribe, apart from Hapu Iwi, in the whole of that land, in the whole of that divide. Forget it if you're trying to interpret them still as Tahupōtiki. Even under Awa, even under Irakai Pūtahi, forget it. It's just ridiculous. Okay? So all those lands to the westward, right up to the Alps, and including the Alps, no Tahumaakaakanuimatua e Tatauma. Okay, let's go further south to Te Awa, Temuka, southern Canterbury there, southern Waitaha Ariki there. I think Waitaha Ariki is suffice there for Canterbury. Okay, that's the proper name for Canterbury, Waitaha Ariki. That is Canterbury. So if we go into the southern part there, we get to Te Awa, we get to Temuka, we get to Te Tihi o Maru, we get to all those areas around there. Okay, same thing. If we go to the westward, including all those lands to the westward, including any lakes, te mea, up to the Alps, and including the Alps. No Tahumaakaakanuimatua tēnā wenua. Ko mātau ke, te mana wenua o i nā whenua. Ati pai? O i nā rohe whenua, no mātau mātua o mātau tūpuna. Okay, and that claim remains today. The taunaha tūpuna of our claims on those lands remains today. Okay, and the same thing within those lands. Rākai nui, hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. Tā matarahi matua, hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. Mā moe, HapuIwi, Whanau-uri. Waitaha ariki, hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. Waitaha nui, hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. Tahupōtiki uri, and waitaha rangi hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. And we've also, even there again, is Tahumaakaakanuimatua te tama, and Tahumaakaakanuimatua te tamarua uri Whanau-uri. Okay. We go even further from there into Waimate, Waitaki, Moeraki, all those areas, e Tatauma. Okay, same thing. Rākai nui, hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. Te ao matarahi matua, hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. No way kua hoki e nā wenua, katoa, tēnā rohe wenua, katoa. Ara, nui nei, ia rākai nui te ao matarahi matua hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. Ia māmoe, HapuIwi, whānauri. Ia waitaha ariki, Hapu Uretaarewa whānauri. Ia waitaha nui, Hapu Uretaarewa whānauri. Ia tahupo tiki uri whānauri. Ia waitaha rangi, Hapu Uretaarewa whānauri. Okay? Koi anō te mana whenua o e nā rohe wenua kia tātou mātou e tāma. Okay? Okay? Then we go into A3M.C.C.C.Settlements.08.07.24, into Otago, where we get some slight changes. I think there's no waitaha rangi in there. I think in some areas there's no tahupōtiki in there. And I'm not too sure whether that's in Dunedin or somewhere around there, because I didn't bring those notes on me. I just had it noted here that I needed to run through the status of existence and the details in the Taunaha Tupuna of Tahumaakaakanuimatua right through that divide. Okay, and that's what I'm doing right now. Okay, no wai kua e nā wenua tonu. No mātou, ara. Ia rā kai nui rā. Ia Tahumaakaakanuimatua, Hapu Uretaarewa whānauri. Ia mā moe HapuIwi whānauri. Ia waitaha ariki, Hapu Uretaarewa whānauri. Ia waitaha nui, Hapu Uretaarewa whānauri. Ia waitaha arangi, Hapu Uretaarewa whānauri. Yeah, and I think it's after that waitaha arangi suddenly hasn't got a claim until they get to Southland. Yeah, that's right. It's them where the changes come, I just remembered. So again, e tatauma, we need to, just like we've done for the other regions, to the westward, all the lands and lakes and awa and river, everything, right up to the Alps, and including the Alps. No Tahumaakaakanuimatua koa, no Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Okay? And so, we come into o te poti, and o amaru. Sorry, o amaru. And sorry, I saw it written like that once, so I ended up saying that. Sorry, it's o amaru, and o te poti, where we get rā kainui, Hapu Uretaarewa whānauri, and where we get meane, te Aomatarahimatua, Hapu Uretaarewa whānauri, and then where we get Māmoe, HapuIwi whānauri, and they're our biggest claims in those areas. Yeah, that's why. And waitaha rangi are not in there. So all of our tribes except for waitaha rangi are in that particular area in Oamaru. And let's not forget our tuakana of Moai HapuIwi are in that area as well. So within their lands, the tuakana ke hoki rātai. Okay? Within all our lands, where we are, we're always tuakana in our lands, but then in particular the Moai are our seniors. Okay, they're our seniors. So all our tribes there, and then again to the westward, right to the Alps, right to the Maunga and the Pai Maunga. And Aotearoa, by the way, is what we originally called the Southern Alps. I think on some mapping they've got it called Te Tiri o Te Moana. That's incorrect. Te Tiri o Te Moana is in fact a name that was called for the whole country. Yeah. So New Zealand, in fact, for want of a translation, for want of a word, is what Te Tiri o Te Moana means. Aotearoa is the name given via the kōrero a Tahumaakaakanuimatua. According to the tātai kawa o te kōrero a Tahumaakaakanuimatua, that's the true name of the Southern Alps. And in fact, when Aotearoa was exclaimed from Kupe's wife on his waka, he was in fact looking at the South Island. They were actually in fact looking at the South Island. Okay? And if you do that when you're out at sea and you look at the South Island and you see the long white cloud there and the mountains, you know, so it's not just about a cloud but a whole beaming, brilliant white world, you know. And there's these great giant mountains. And what's our interpretation of a mountain in our culture? The ariki, the taiopuru. Ariki mataura. That's what mountains signify to us. The top chiefs. Okay? So that was an amazing sight. It's like some of the sites back in the islands. When you look at some of the islands, they look a bit like that, except they're a lot smaller. Even when you go into Raiatea, Tahiti, you see the ranges there. But it's quite smaller. So you never had an Aotearoa. But you definitely got an Ao there. And you definitely got some brilliance, and you definitely got the blue and the green there. A lot of the significance of our tribal colours. And all of that sort of kōrero. Okay. E tatama. Alright. Kai te pai. And so we get the idea. Ne? Our biggest claims in Dunedin and Oamaru are the HapuIwi claims and the Waitaha Ariki Hapu Uretaarewa claims and the Waitaha Nui Hapu Uretaarewa claims as well. They are our biggest ones in the Dunedin area. However, Tahumaakaakanuimatua te tama and Tahumaakaakanuimatua te tamarua. Whanau-uri are also in there. Okay, they're also in there within those rights and interests there. And then we get to the overwhelming majority of Southland, okay, where Waitaha Rangi returns, and that includes Stewart Island, E Tatama, where there are the rā kainui hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri, and no rātau tonu hoki te rohe wenua nā, te nuinga kia ia mea nei, ia te amatarahi matua hoki hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri, māmoe HapuIwi, Waitaha Ariki Hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri, Waitaha Nui Hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri, and Tahupōtiki Uri Whanau-uri, and Waitaha Ārangi Hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau-uri. Okay. And again, right up to the northern border and right to the southern border, the overwhelming majority, a lot of lands around there are still Tahupōtiki. Okay. You might get some lands, some minor, small areas of land through the other regions too, but you wouldn't get much. You wouldn't get much. Probably more substantial in Southland, and then there's some areas on the west coast as well that are still tahu pōtiki, but the overwhelming majority is Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Okay, right to the northern border of Southland, that's Murihiku, to the most southern coast, including Stewart Island, and east to west, that's Te Taurapa o Te Waka Maui, we get the overwhelming, up to about, anywhere between 80 and 90% of Murihiku is Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Okay, and that includes the Takitimu Mountains, Takitimu Forest, te mea, o Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Okay, and then we get from te tūtai atu te raki whanua, which is Fiordland, Pio Tahi, Tamatea, and every other area to the north. I don't think it changes that much, except when we get to, I think it's Hokitika, just after Hokitika. Hold on. Is it Greymouth or Hokitika? One of those two. And I think north of there is Punakaiki-Tauranga. I think we get some change in there when Waitaha Rangi disappears again, and then they come back again into the further rights and interest to the north of the west coast of the South Island. Okay? So in that whole area into the west coast there, e Taunaha, e nā wenua katoa, ngā wai, ngā taimoana, e nā katoa no overwhelmingly no Tahumaakaakanuimatua e Taunaha. Ia rā kainui, hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau, ia te ao matarahi matua, hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau, ia māmoe HapuIwi, whānauri, ia waitaha ariki, hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau, ia waitaha nui, hapu Uretaarewa-Whanau, ia tahu pōtiki, uri whānauri. I'm not too sure if they disappear in two of the areas along the west there. I think they do. And then they come back further into the north, further around about Punakaiki-Tauranga. Yeah. And then Waitaha Rangi disappears up there and then comes back further north, I think, as we get into the Kahurangi National Park. Okay, and all our original rights and interests in those areas as well, leading up into the Whanganui Inlet there and back into Mohua. Okay, Tatama. Mohua, Tākaka, they are not too far away from Tākaka. Waitapu, Pariwhakauho, Aorere, e rā wāhi katoa. Tata tonu ki te waka puaka, tata tonu hoki ki whakatū. Okay, that's Nelson area. Okay, but we cease around about Whanganui Inlet, Mohua areas, in those areas. Okay, ridiculously huge claim too, though, but entirely provable, well beyond reasonable doubt. Okay, so you have to understand that, and that's the coverage we wanted to bring in the update for TeTaiTonga AukatiTai, or the Southern Divide. That what we're hoping largely is that, to a degree, that there is a number of the areas there in this, even on the west coast, where most of the lands, especially from the west coast eastward up to the Alps, same again. Overwhelmingly Tahumaakaakanuimatua, including the Alps. Okay, and this is why we claim Mount Cook. This is why we claim Pukaki. Okay, Te Arawa are fine to claim in there. We got no worries with their claim. We got no worries with their claim, because we know they've got one. But they just might need to check the extents of that claim, because what they might find is that they're quite wrong about that extent. And that's probably immensely wrong, extensively wrong about that. Okay? Yeah, and so again, as we go northward along the west coast, te tai pūkarukaru o Pūtini. As we go north, the further north we go, same thing, to the eastward, right up to the Alps, and including the Alps. No Tahumaakaakanuimatua, te nuinga, the overwhelming majority. We're talking overwhelming. The same in the Punakai ki Tauranga, Hokitika, Greymouth areas, eastward into the Alps, and including the Alps. The overwhelming majority again, no Tahumaakaakanuimatua. And the same as we go and join back up in Mohua, e Taunaha. Koina nā hoki tō tātou hei kōrero nui tonu ki nā wāhi, ki nā rohe whenua, ki roto te TeTaiTonga AukatiTai. Okay, e Taunaha? And so we have the largely the first of our updates, and we've just managed to work through that, the first of our updates for the Southern Divide, and I'm really happy that we've done that, and I'm also really happy to conclude there, because that's a huge claim. That's a huge claim. But it needs to be stipulated that that is, in fact, the factual claim. And the well beyond reasonable doubt, proven claim. Taunaha Tupuna we're talking to, native title of Tahumaakaakanuimatua to the South Island, to the Southern Divide. Okay, e Taunaha? And so we've covered them all now, and I'm really happy we've done that. Remember the Western Divide on that map I showed you, and let's see if I can pick up that map again really quickly. On that map I showed you, we had a look at the map, and I showed you where the grey area was for the Eastern Divide, and its extents, and in particular the areas that it covers, including the Uretaarewa, where we were talking from last week. Now, after Wairarapataradua, next week, after the Te Tai Hauauru AukatiTai, the Western Divide, our talk next week, which will be all on Te Tiriti, let's not forget we'll go back to TeTaiTonga AukatiTai in the following week, then go to TeTaiTonga the week after that, and then come back down to TeTaiTonga AukatiTai after that. Okay? And yeah, that might be quite yeah, we're going to understand Tahu Pōtiki if they have a difficulty with a lot of these claims, and that's fine with us. That's fine with us. But as you can see, it's ridiculously true as well. As ridiculously massive in terms of extents of claim. But factual. He TeTaiTai kawa te kōrero katoa. Okay? Substantiated fully. Let's not argue with that. Let's not argue with that. Because even a lot of the Crown evidence, even they can't see that. In their own evidence, they can't see that. But it substantiates our claim. Okay? And let's not forget the whole of the Paemaunga of the Southern Alps, Aotearoa, or in other words, Te Tiri o Te Moana Aotearoa, that's what we call the South Island, and Tahumaakaakanuimatua, that's the proper name, Te Tiri o Te Moana Aotearoa. Sometimes you get Taina names of different areas, Taina names like Te Punga o Te Waka Māori, they're fine to use. Or we just say Te Punga, Te Punga. Some people get carried away and claim it for Maori and stuff like that. That's not true. Sometimes kōrero was used to explain the existence of particular lands and rohe wenua at points, because when you check the evidence, none of those areas actually were possessed or belonged to Maori at all, to the Maori at all. Okay, yes, they're part of the kōrero of the original inhabitants, and yes, Maori is one of the main ancestries, yes, but he's only uri whanau-uri. Okay, and he comes out of the fifth line of HapuIwi of the country. He's far from seniors, hundreds of thousands of ancestries junior. Okay, and yeah, so we've just covered that whole area there, and we've covered all of the extensive claims and rights and interests of Taunahanaha Tupuna, native title, Taunahanaha Whenua, native title to the Southern Divide. And if you can recall, if you ever got to look at a copy of that map quickly last week, what you would have found at the copy of the map last week is that the colour for the Eastern Divide was grey, the colour for the Northern Divide was yellow, the colour of the stars, the colour for the Southern Divide was blue, and then you get the Western Divide and the light green, or it looks like peppermint green, or what do they call that? Chakra. You call that colour chakra. Okay, and we've got lots more kōrero to share about the divides. Don't think that we've given out all the kōrero yet e tātou mā, because we haven't. Okay. Alright, and yeah, still lots more kōrero on the divides there. In fact, the most tūturu kōrero on those divides we haven't given out yet. Okay, we've gotten pretty close. Alright, but all of that kōrero will come later. Let's not forget that Reo HapuIwi is held up until our two settlements are concluded fully concluded and finalised and signed off and checked past lawyers, etc., etc., etc. And we get some sort of back off from the tū whanau. Okay, we are unhappy actually with this situation because we're sick of these tribes doing the same old thing all the time just to cause trouble for us. They're extremely jealous. There's a lot of jealousy in there, a lot of spite, a lot of inability to cope with even or accept the outcomes, the conclusions to a lot of today's research. And a lot of that research is going towards tomorrow's research, so they're not going to get much different in future. You know, they're not going to get much different. So they may as well try to accept it. Okay? Because our research in the area, this is why we want to mention our research. Our research in the area has been second to none. The most accurate, the most precise amongst all of the research of HapuIwi in this space. We're actually the leading HapuIwi now in that area. Pretty close behind us is Moai HapuIwi. Okay, and this is why we back Moai. Why? Because their research is Aukatitai, their research is second to none but us. Okay, we've snuck past Moai. Because there's a number of things Moai's gotten wrong, and they just didn't realise it, so we're working with them on those things. Okay? And yeah, we've snuck past them probably in the last 5 to 10 years. Yeah. And that's why we share a lot of that. We share a lot of our sources, a lot of the resources, a lot of the evidence. You hear me talking about different sources, top class resources, you know. And we've got world class, national, local, regional, all those sorts of sources we can actually look at. And it would be really neat. Yeah, we're getting too picky, I think, if we start looking at different passages and different pages and all that sort of stuff. Gets too picky, so I just summarize across them, tell you what we know within them. If you want to go and have a look at them, then you can get picky. But yeah, when you're online doing a kōrero like this, you don't want to get too picky unless you shorten your kōrero and you just target on that evidence. That's better. That's a better way to work with evidence like that. Otherwise it gets too picky, it gets too but we know our stuff. Our tūturutanga is intact, and we know that, and very tūturu too is Moai HapuIwi. So that's what you need to realise. And the other thing, the only problem is, there are some things wrong in there. So we need to work on those things, and then we'll be set right. Okay, and so that's pretty much e tatauma our kōrero for today, and that's how I want to leave it, because there's just so much in there, so much kōrero in there, and so much we've had to cover, and all the detail in there on the total. That's almost the whole of the Southern Divide. That's almost the whole of the Southern Divide. I mean, most of Tahu Pōtiki, what they'll find is that they're mostly in Southland. Yeah. Though they do have small lands along the west coast, and they do have small amounts of lands on the east, they'll find the absolute majority is Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Okay, and this is going back over 2,000 to 3,000 years. I mean, they can't even prove rights back to 1,000 years. They've only got rights back to around about 1350 or thereabouts. And then they're very little their rights. If you look at their status, if you look at their pedigree, if you look at everything there, you check it all out properly, you check out their deal, you cannot doubt, I think, quite clearly our claims, our rights. Te Taunaha Tupuna, Taunaha Wenua o Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Ki te tiri o te moana Aotearoa. You cannot doubt that. Okay, e tātou mā. Now I just want to give you another quick squiz at that map, and that map is a very important part of how we like to work in Tahumaakaakanuimatua, because it absolutely does not lie. That's what we like about it. It absolutely does not lie. The divisions, the way they first established right across the country, and that's including right over that 3,000 years, but especially through that over 1,000 years, over those three major migrations and into the 1350s or thereabouts, e tātou mā, the AukatiTai, or the divides of the country, the Tutura divides, are absolutely critical to interpretations. I mean, if you're making an interpretation, if you're formulating one around a particular supertribe from within any of the particular divides, originally this is talking about where they settled eventually in the country, you'd be able to pick or around considering your final conclusions whether you've gone wrong or right. Okay, and you'd be able to do that as a result of looking at them in terms of the divide that they originated from. And you'll find that everything lines up with exactly where they're from. Okay, e tātou mā? Alright. Oh, what's happened here? Oh, I'm going to have to put this onto my something happening there. I don't know what, but my connection there is not working, so I'm going to have to go onto data and work it from there and bring up my map on data, because I've got plenty of data. See, that's working. There's some sort of jam going on in there. Something's jamming the actual network and my Wi-Fi from here. Something's jamming it, so here we go. Everything's starting to come up now. Everything's starting to come on. And it's interesting, that map and the colour scheme. Lots of cool that are around that. But we only take it back to over 1,000 years. But it does tell, pretty much the same story right back over the whole of the 3,000 years. Chakra, the yellow, I think it's almost a lemony yellow. The grey, I don't know whether it's emperor grey or silver grey. It may be silver grey. And then the blue, there's quite a darkish blue. Already a lot of people are talking around Tangaroa. Well, yes, it does join with Tangaroa, but that's not the major reason. The major reason, I mean, when you come from the islands, you're more Tangaroa, but once you're here, it's a little bit different. We're talking about rangi nui once we're here. and you'll find that other areas in the other divides of the country, they relate with that. They coincide, they align with all of that kōrero in terms of talking about ranginui. Okay, but we shall be able to get that map e Tatauma and assure you that we are definitely dealing with the right areas of the country, and we are dealing with exactly the correct divide, and we are interpreting things exactly how they need to be interpreted in terms of where things need to align accurately e Tatauma, in terms of aligning with the accurate there. You can see the grey there where we were last week, the yellow up top there. Oh, hold on, let me try and get that yellow on there. Oh, can I get it still? Oh, there we go. Maybe that's the best we can get it. The yellow up the top there, that's the north. The chakra, or green, light green, top of the south, and King Country, bottom of the north. And of course, all this area here from Kaiapoi down, you can see, and right across the most southern border of the top of the south is the Southern Divide that we've just been talking around just over these last couple of hours or more e Tatauma, as we wind it up today. It's been an awesome kōrero, lots of detail in there, but yeah, I didn't want to go any further than that, so we've pretty much updated for the south, where we're pretty ready to go. Along the way, no doubt we'll get into some more details on the ground, a lot more of the nitty-gritty detail. Teiti me te rahi, kairoto i te kawa, TeTaiTonga kawa o te kōrero, i runga tonu me ki i te papa o te wenua. So, everything i te tū papa, yeah, on the ground, we'll start to deal with that from area to area, from place to place, from piece of land to piece of land. We can do that. We can do that. And I think sometimes we'll be called on, people will question and want to see that. That's fine. But more so, e Tatauma, understand that we're not picking on anybody. Same thing we did in the north. We're not picking on anybody. We're not trying to unlawfully stage a takeover. we're not trying to do anything like that either. This is just the facts to our claim. In depth, however depth you want it. We can go the deepest. We're part of the originals in the country. And unlike Gaia, G-A-I-A, who always have more questions than answers and a real lack of evidence to prove exactly what they're talking about, let's not listen to any more of that e Tatauma. We've got a lot of people going around the country saying there were Celtics here. That's false. That's false information. Okay, they're trying to pinpoint Celtic origins in the country. That's false. Yeah. And they pinpointed the Kaimanawa Wall and other, boulders and stuff like that. I mean, we've got the same boulders amongst the Māmoe and Waitaha Riki, Waitaha Nui in Moeraki. Okay? the kai manawa, very much could be strongly related with the Moriori, or Moriori Waikato, or Moriori Tahumaakaakanuimatua. Okay, because that wall is actually, we strongly associated with the Mayan Indians, are part of us, but more so with us, but it just has that sort of style. Okay, so we need to forget these these claims from people who watch too much Guy. They need to understand they actually don't have the evidence to say a lot of the things they say. If they're making conclusions, they need to bring the evidence forward on those conclusions, and what you'll find is that there's still a lot of questions there, and they're actually assuming things. They're not actually proving anything at all. They're bringing forward assumptions. This is what we think it is, they're saying. That's what they're saying. Okay? Because if you looked at their evidence, it's quite scanty when you look at how, exactly what they're saying. They need a lot more evidence than what they're showing in order to conclude on what they conclude on. So let's not go believing them anymore, Tatauma. But we would never claim the extent of claim that we have in the country if we knew, kai te he ki e tahi wai, or no meake, kahore. We would never, if we had lands, and we continue to research. And that's not just because of the extent of our claims or the extent of where we've claimed into other areas of other tribes. But that's according to the extent of exactly what our claims are and where our rights and interests have always been in the country. Okay, and so, we've begun on the Southern Divide, and awesome kōrero. Father Lord, Yehoia, we are so very thankful to come this far. We're now able to cover all of the rights and interests to the native title of Tahumaakaakanuimatua across the country, and we are really joyful and happy about the simple fact that you've been with us all the way. In fact, we would argue that you've been here with our people even beforehand. You've been here, and you were here even when we refused you. But what matters is today we don't. What matters is today we reconnect with our ancient lines in the world, and also with you, because you were our first Uretaarewa-Hapu, and so we've returned to you, and everything that we do, we commit to you first, Father Lord, as we commit all of the works that we're trying to do. Everything we do, we commit to your needy, and we cover a lot of those areas in our work that we do. A lot of needy people amongst, and they're yours. We know they're your children. You're part of your creation. And so, Father Lord, we thank you, we honour you, and we give to you all the glory from all these works that in fact we would argue were the works of your hand. We thank you, Lord, that all the goodness and advantageousness we can all gain from not just Tahumaakaakanuimatua, not just all our hapu, not just all our iwi, whanau-uri, but also our uri, and also our whānau right through. And let's include e tatauma all our communities right across the country, where every colour and creed, there's so much advantageousness from all this work, that not just the good and the re-establishments that we recreate, that we work towards and that we endure and persevere with until we have those re-establishments done. Father, Lord, we know that are also with your being done with your mighty hand, with your ultimate input, because without you, preeminent one, Christ Jesus, without you and the power of your Spirit and honor and authority and glory of your works, we would never be here where we are today. In Jesus' mighty name, Father, Lord, we thank you, we honor you, we exalt you, way above all else in the whole of the world, and in fact, in the whole of the universe, Lord. In Jesus' conquering name. Amen. Ka piti hona ka tātai hono, ko rātau rā te mate, tonu ki a rātau. Ka piti hona ka tātai hono, ko tātau anō tēnei tātau, ko te kānuhi ora ki a tātau mā kuau. Kai te mihi atu, tēnā rā tātau, a mauri ora, kahuri.